I think on the conversation of resourcing in Khayelitsha, or let's say community police resourcing, I want to reflect quickly on the issue of budgets and legal framework, and I know that Jean will be speaking about the police budget specifically, but I want to add my voice to what Zaki is saying, is that I don't think it's necessarily a case of more resources, especially when we look at the growth in the police budget over the last 15 years. We now have a police budget, Jean, help me if I'm wrong, but of about 74 billion rand. Now, 74 billion rand means 202 million rand per day, or 8.5 million rand per hour. So in the time that it will take us to run this conference, police will be spending 42 million rand on a national basis. That's what it's costing us already to run our police. So I also believe it's not necessarily a case of more resources, it is also a case of how we use the resources. Then equally important, we need to look at the legal mandate of police, and that is articulated very carefully in section 205 of the Constitution, and if I may just read it here, section 203 speaks, the objects of the police service are to prevent, combat, investigate crime, to maintain public order, to protect and secure the inhabitants of the Republic and their property, and to uphold and enforce the law. So there's also a concept in government that we call funds follow function. So if the allocation, let me just see, I think they've got it now. So funds will follow legal mandate, and the legal mandate is then the important part as it speaks to the province. Now, provincial government, in terms of the, let's say, the legal mandate over policing, is set out in Chapter 11 of the Constitution. There are four important sections of the Act of the Constitution that we need to take note of. The first one is section 206(1) that says that the province is responsible to determine the policing needs and priorities of the province, which must be given to the national minister, and the Constitution goes further to say that the national minister must consider the policing needs and priorities of the province when he makes his budgets and when he does his planning. And I can also, I don't know if the House knows this, but the whole Khayelitsha report was submitted as the policing needs and priority submission for Khayelitsha, unedited or unchanged, was submitted, which places the minister, of course, under some sort of obligation also to take this in consideration when they look at the resourcing of Khayelitsha going forward. But having said that, I think it's also important, as the previous speaker already spoke about, it's not only police that has safety resources. The province, Department of Community Safety, has a budget of 249 million rand, which is about the spending of police on one day, but be that, it's a significant amount of money. The city, if my information is correct, is about 1.7 billion rand, also significant resources. So in our attempts, when we look at the policing needs and priorities, we also need to say, how do we use this information as what is done today to influence the way that government is assigning safety resources to the community. It's the legal mandate that allows as a head of department, I'm what they call the, how can I say, the accounting officer. That's the legal term that is used in the Public Finance Management Act. Now, being an accounting officer basically means that you need to make sure that the money is spent either by legal mandate, which is a big problem for the province. And I want to put this to especially there's a number of academics amongst us. There's a lot of work written about the lack of clarity on the mandate of provinces. Yes, the Constitution speaks about section 206, it speaks to monitor police conduct. But because we have no national department of community safety, like we have a national department of health or national department of education, there's a lot of gray area in terms of whether or how we must spend our money. Therefore, a lot of it becomes what they call discretionary spend. Now, once you start using discretion in deciding spending, that's a recipe for me as a bureaucrat, that's a recipe for disaster. Because there are so many changing forces, there are so many changing opinions, it is ideal if you have a very clearly articulated legal mandate to say, take for instance community police forums, which I know is very close to all of us. There's no legal obligation as we stand here in the Police Act or in the Constitution or anywhere that says community safety forums must be supported financially through the province. The Community Safety Act that was drafted last year but is not yet in position because we are still interacting with the police on the regulations, that now creates a framework, but that again leaves the whole issue for discretion. I'm sorry, I know in terms of a bureaucrat, it's now. Let's look at the CPFs then specifically. The National Development Plan, I think that's very important because that is the strategy document of national government. And they speak there, it's chapter 12, if I remember correctly. They say the mobilization of communities with dedicated budgets and cost-benefit analysis improving on their effectiveness. That is what the National Development Plan asks from us in terms of community police forums. The department then developed what we call the expanded partnership programs that does exactly that. If we can just go very briefly through some of the slides. The background to the expanded partnership program is just an audit that we did in 2010. We found that there was really problems in terms of your CPF. Some of them were, let's call it a one-man show. Some of them did not do the basic functions as set out in Section 18. And the Khayelitsha Commission actually had extensive evidence on the failure of the community police forums in at least 2 of the 3 areas which they focused on. So again, this program is then aimed at how do we improve the efficiency of CPFs, but funded then or built in a link to a funding model or what we call behavioral economy. So when we look at the CPFs in terms of their performance, important is Section 18 of the Act, we can just go. Section 18 of the Act articulates the functions of the police forums, but it does so at a very broad term. Let's use one example. The CPFs are responsible to promote transparency. But what does that mean in terms of activities? That's where we sat at the time with police, with the provincial board. We sat and we determined activities. For instance, the issuing of a newsletter. That is a way that you promote transparency, and we link the funding model to that. So if the CPFs are performing those functions, they generate income. Now, let me skip a bit of the slides there. I've spoken about those. Let's go to the Khayelitsha Commission then. They had detailed evidence on the functioning or lack thereof of CPFs, and there you can refer to pages 407 to 412 of the Khayelitsha report. Paragraph 30, page 114, the Commission made the following comments about the EPP program. They said, although there are different views of the desirability of the EPP, the Commission is of the view that this is a relative new program that should be given time before its success is finally assessed. Now, end of last financial year, thank you, Khan. End of last financial year, we had an independent impact study done on the EPP program. And this was done as part of the management performance tool that is then a requirement of the delivery unit in the Office of the Presidency. The independent study was done by Creative Consulting and Development Works. Is a specialist company in this field. And their findings the report is also available to those that would like to access it, the report as well as the slides. But the findings, and I'm going to read, is the evaluation found that the payment of delivery model introduced by EPP acts as a powerful incentive to CPFs to perform the required activities, which in turn makes them more efficient and effective. According to CPFs, it has brought much needed structure and guidance to CPFs to perform their statutory functions, which is a testament to its relevance. The EPP funding incentive has encouraged CPFs to establish closer relationships with registered members of the South African Police Service local stations to gain a deeper understanding of the police operational framework, as well as to perform their police oversight role in a more efficient way. While friction with non-management staff still exists, they could be mitigated through more formal introduction and training of SAPS members on the EPP. So when we look at the way forward in terms of community police resourcing, at least seen from a perspective of provincial government, firstly, we need to acknowledge and then again ask, because we need SAP support in taking the CPFs forward. Why is this so? Because legally, we don't have the mandate. For instance, if there's a non-performing CPF, we can't dissolve them, we can't dismiss them, we can do nothing other than to complain and complain and complain to SAPS. The only people that can do something in this regard is then our provincial commissioner. Secondly, provincial CPF boards, you understand their support structures. We need to look at escalating this process to also the cluster level and then of course to the board included. I think in that, and Zaki spoke about throwing the cat amongst pigeons, Zaki, I'm asking myself always, why do you have elections if you are working with volunteers? Why do you want to exclude people? Why is it the process of, no, you can't be part of this because you were not? Why can't we have a much broader, inclusive approach? The IT systems that we have developed, and there is a website already where CPFs can submit their reports electronically, which will also then make sure that the reports and the information is much more transparently available. And then lastly, and I want to just close with the two important recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry, also as it's recorded on page 411, paragraph 31. They said that the SAPS and the province, community safety, must jointly work to prevent, jointly preventing the work of CPFs being adversely affected by political contestation. And secondly, also that CPFs cannot be the only strategy to promote community policing. I think Zaki also spoke about it, and that is where we are very keen to start looking at the role of neighborhood watchers, start looking at the role of victim empowerment as the previous speaker spoke about as well. The Commission, for instance, also touched on the importance of dealing with complaints of the SAPS institutional culture, the perceptions of corruption, and the improper use of force, to mention only a few. Ladies and gentlemen, with those comments, I thank you kindly.